So, guess I don't see you on the screen, Eric, but you got to be there. There you are. So, you want us to start out with where we're at and what we're figured out?
Yeah, you guys had a plan.
We did. We negotiated with ourselves, as you asked. There was
Perfect.
better advice. We did it. So, what we did was went and pulled up the immunity statute that you pointed us out to us that works. And Senator Nethercott has worked. That's why we asked the extra time, which thank you for giving it. Senator Nethercott has worked out new language to fit within that existing statute that just tweaks it ever so slightly to make it where it actually honestly works. It's not just a healthcare statute. So I will let her pick it up from here and talk about the language. It's really pretty minor in my opinion, but it does very solid things for the employers in our state. And it's not this major gargantuous change that you folks have been worried about. Senator Nethercott.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think where we left the conversation off earlier today was recognizing that 35.4.114 likely provided some solutions, and understanding maybe where that could be deficient, I think was the issue. And so consulting with LSO, recognizing there was a difference in interpretations and some possible ambiguity, thought maybe we could craft just some subtle amendments to that particular statutory section that could address the concerns of business without completely having tort reform in a third reading amendment concerning this issue. And so do I think it solves all of the problems? I don't. But do I think it's a compromise where both parties might have to feel uncomfortable? I do, but I think it does bridge the gap and allows everyone maybe to meet in the middle. At least I'm hopeful for that. So again, I don't think it will check all of the boxes for either side, but that means compromise has been reached. And so with that, I'm going to try to share this on my screen. If not, I think the good Ian Shaw has a copy of it as well, but I have it available and I've never done this before, so bear with me, but I'm hopeful that you'll be able to see this and then evaluate this proposal accordingly. Oh, the host has disabled my ability to screen share. It's probably prudent. I don't know if that can be allowed.
Senator Nethercott, I have given you ability to screen share.
Great. I just did. I'm hopeful you can see that. Can somebody confirm? You can see what I see? Okay.
In my opinion, she wrote this in a way that it does exactly what was presented to us before we broke. It's now clarified to the point that it's clear that it does involve others other than healthcare. It hasn't done much else.
Representative Connolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to be clear, that the suggestion is to eliminate the current Ansami-Dalton amendment and replace it with this?
Yes.
Or something else? Okay.
No, with this would be a tweak to the statutes. I've visited with council and they said that we can do that without going to a free committee, that we're within the framework of where it was at. And the advice to me was that we are able to do that.
Okay. So if I could ask a couple questions of the suggester. Senator Nethercott, is person already business entity already included under person by Title I, technically?
I think that is debatable. And so this certainly provides that clarification. So I think what we need to be mindful of as legislators is that the business community is incredibly nervous at a time that is so important for them to feel confident in reopening. And so I want to avoid getting into a lot of legal, arguments concerning the definitions when we can maybe expressly provide them and alleviate any of those concerns where it's easy. I also think, in light of the full support of the Judiciary Committee continuing to review this issue, that the conversation doesn't stop here, and that's a message as well. But in order to address the overriding concern that as of today, there's going to be a floodgate of litigation, and there's no protections, that this particular statutory section does explicitly provide protections. Again, I think that there will be feedback that it doesn't go far enough, that there's concerns about the specific requirements, and I don't dispute that. But for where we are today, and the concerns of losing all of the hard work in House Bill 1002, that I think that this is a good compromise to alleviate those business concerns where we clearly are providing a solution with the promise to continue working it in a more meaningful way that allows for stakeholder feedback and a transparency in the process.
Senator Salmi-Dahl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this looks really good. The only thing I would have concerns about is that we still left in arising from complying with those instructions. But maybe it picks up okay with it, or having acted in good faith, because I don't have any instructions. So I just wanted to go to that concern, but otherwise I'm happy to pick up the immunity here.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I understand that the businesses want clear immunity that is undebatable. And I don't believe any of the drafts that have currently been before us provide that either. So no one will ever feel 100% comfortable, right? And I think that's a reality we need to understand, but we're doing everything we can to ensure business is protected, that the public is protected. We're balancing those interests and we're balancing our obligations to having a transparent process. So yeah, I do think that there's fair criticism that this is not the end-all solution. But again, I direct your attention to the future where hopefully we will be addressing this in a more robust way.
My hat's off to you, Senator. I think it's a very honest compromise that does exactly what you said. It does not make anybody's cup be totally full, but it bridges well what a compromise is. I think it does one other thing that's there that I think is very important, is the ability to have people really honestly comply with these orders is becoming more of a problem. And this, the way it's done, makes it very clear that if you're not complying with the orders, you are at risk of losing that immunity. And I, for one, am a believer that it really does make sense that when these orders are thought out and done right, that they're taken care of. And this says, if you flagrantly do not follow those orders, you're going to lose that immunity. And to me, that's a very good incentive for both sides to follow things correctly and go about it in the correct way.
All right, so maybe, Mr. Chairman, if we could, Representative Wilson, do you have any thought? I mean, we're just reading this, trying to get all the punctuation and all the things right. So, or trying to understand how it says. So, Sue, do you have any initial response?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. So, I think that this was, having brought up 35.4.114 was a good starting point. I've had some discussions on this end as to maybe we don't want to write it into 35.4.14, but just put it into the bill with a time limit rather than amending the Green Book with this. Not being an attorney, that's not really my area of it's not the sort of thing that I think about particularly. I had some other sorry, I'm trying to find where I had typed these ideas, whether we would want to specify something in legalese about deliberately failing to comply. You know, not being an attorney, I'm not really sure what the what good faith, you know, what the analysis of that is legally and how that is approached in court, or in some sort of complaint. But I feel like this is a good, certainly a good beginning, a good approach. I'm willing to continue working with this.
Representative Conley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My thoughts to start with are that I think that this language clarifies what I believe that the statute says, but I think that it provides for some relief from concern that 35-40114 might not have included businesses. It would certainly be my reading of the language as it exists now that it does, but this additional language, I think, gives some comfort. And so therefore, I find it acceptable. It also kind of allows for some of our county health officers as well to be given guidance and clarity that those kind of county health officers' guidance are also kind of acceptable in terms of what needs to be followed. That being said, so I'm okay with this, and thank you to Senator Nethercott. I still have a bit of concern over the process, over including this kind of provision in 1002 that was so thoroughly vetted in terms of the other provisions. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stop.
Sure, thank you. So I too, I've seen Representative Wilson's, Chairman Wilson's, her version. I too have a version. My version, I actually sent it to Representative Conley. I haven't sent it to the rest of you. My version is very similar in many ways. And I think actually I like the suggestion of having a simplified version in non-codified statute with a date, with a timestamp on it. So I don't know if you have any thought about that, Representative Nethercott, but
I do.
all right, thank you.
And mine's this, it's kind of neat. It almost has a date on it the way it is, because this section of the statute goes only with public health emergencies. And I think this is going to be a pretty common one. So it doesn't give you blanket immunity throughout the law. It says, Romanet A starts out, it says during a public health emergency. So unless we have a declared emergency, it doesn't kick into effect. So I think what we've done is found really a good way to go about it, because it doesn't have to sunset. It's, if we have another pandemic, I would guess we're going to have these same concerns. And this does the same thing. It says if you do the right thing, do the right way, it doesn't make you totally immune from a lawsuit, but it certainly helps you have this vision of immunity that's out there. And I think this is really a good way to go. I will give my apology to all of you on the process. That's what happens in this business. And we do get to see that often. And whether we like it or not, it is here. And I think we have found a reasonable solution to a pretty difficult issue.
So, I'm still digesting. So good faith is in the same sentence twice. Acted in good faith or in good faith responds. There's an or between them. That's what I'm trying to understand, Senator Nethercott. So there's an or between county and who, and that separates the good faith in the first part of the sentence, I believe, with the second part. Is that the intention?
Yes, I think it considers the continuing action to behave in good faith, and looking kind of backwards, if you're talking about a liability issue or an event that occurred, did they act in good faith at the time?
So my second question was, and this goes to Senator Anselmi Dalton's suggestion that there were certain businesses that did not have guidance. Should there be federal guidance? Because we certainly do have CDC guidance as well. We have state orders, federal, county orders. In current statute, we have state health orders. We have county health orders previously, just before this section 114. And then we also, the state officer also will often refer people to federal guidance. So I just throw that out there as just a suggestion. Or would that fall under the state health officers suggesting federal guidance? Any thoughts there?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that that should be left. One thing that I wanted to not do today was to do any kind of substantive changes, really any significant policy changes, to be consistent with our concerns over process and transparency. And so working within the statutory framework we have, there's a difference in interpretation for the applicability of the statutory section, if it was limited in scope to just healthcare workers, or if it was broader as a result of that language of or other person. And so because of a good majority of the bodies in both chambers, I think, felt that, and I think if you look at the statutory history too, in 2003, it was intended to be broader than healthcare workers. And so we are being consistent with the legislature in 2003 who originally enacted this law, and also with the majority, I think, of the legislature's belief that this should apply to those beyond the healthcare workers. So we're not doing any major policy decision. We're adding a clarifying piece, and then we're being consistent with the state health officer. But what we have learned here is that our state health officer and our executive branch have really decided to, and recognizes that each county is so different, and that to extend that authority, that if there is a county health order, and maybe not a state health order that is as restrictive, that still applies. And so a business owner should not be disregarding that county health directive because the state health directive doesn't do that. I would hope that our state health director and all of our local health directors are working in tandem and also directing the public to those federal orders and encompassing and incorporating them into their own. But I leave that at their discretion for what to do. So to go back, I didn't want to do any substantive changes or policy changes, or perhaps, get rid of our local control, which I know we love, and perhaps enhance it here. And again, I just want to reiterate, this is not the end solution to this conversation. This will continue, but I think for the next 6 weeks, for the concern about the floodgate of litigation, I believe that this provides businesses those protections that they're seeking.
So, Mr. Chairman, so I think I heard that Representative Wilson was comfortable having this drafted up in a true form. So we have a document before us for adoption. I think that would be the appropriate way to proceed. Senate would have it be drafted up as an amendment to the bill and to Green Book. Representative Connolly, are you comfortable with having that drafted by asking legal staff to have that drafted up for consideration?
I am.
Okay, so that'd be, I guess, Mr. Chairman, it sounds like your side is also willing to do that. So are you willing to just to ask staff to have the intent of this drafted up? They may have a little different format or whatever, and put it in a amendment form so that we can bring it back and take it forth to our bodies. Is that how we would do that?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay. So do you want to work through the rest of the amendments?
We should, if we're in agreement here, which I very much thank you for your patience in doing it. We did get away from the title that I talked about, and I thank the House very much for considering this and looking at it. So kudos to all of you. So we just well pick the paper up and we'll head through the rest of them.
Let's, hold on. Sorry, I'm losing my controls here for a minute. I just sent you my version just for you to, not to trash if you choose to. So let's go through that. Let's go through the rest of
the email.
Should have went through. I'm having a little bit of a conductivity problem, so. When time are you, you still don't know when you're going back in?
I don't, but I'm guessing very shortly after this, we'll get through part of it.
Well, so we're going in 7 minutes, 6 minutes now, at 3 o'clock.
Let's see if we can get it done in 7 minutes.
All right, so we'll, so workers' comp. Looks like we have two amendments, two different amendments, House 2001 and Senate 3002. I would suggest if we adopt those two and drop any others, we've encapsulated the mirror amendment with the House amendment, and we've done the technical corrections with the Senate amendment. Anybody see anything differently than that?
No objection from me. My other committee members. Nethercott's okay, and Salmi Dalton.
Maybe we should all when we get out of this, we'll all go back and double review and make sure
We will. We'll look at the language in the final.
Yep, make sure. So the next one would be the WCDA things. Yep. And it looks like there was a mirror amendment. So what if we took on this one, we'd take the Senate 2004.
Okay.
And adopt that, and not the House, whatever the House one is. They know how to do it. And then we also, there was, in the House side, there was a third reading amendment number 002.
Okay.
And that modifies that previous amendment. That's why they're not mirror amendments anymore.
Right.
So take a look at that and see if that would fit with for all the WCDA issues.
I have looked at it on my part and I'm comfortable.
Okay, well, I mean, I want the whole crew to, everybody got to be comfortable. 6 votes on here. Sorry, hey, hello, Ian. Great to see you.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure. So the proposal that you're discussing now would be to adopt H3002, correct?
Yeah, so we would adopt Senate 2004 and H3002. I think those two, one is a mirror and one is an amendment to a mirror. Is that correct? Yes. And the previous one would be to adopt H2001, which was also had a mirror on the Senate side, and Senate 3002, which had the corrections and the technical things on the Senate side. Is that correct?
Very good.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So then
are you okay with where we're at on the H3002?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just making a proposal. You guys will all go back and make sure we understand it and it does what we think it does.
Yeah.
On the WCDA, we also have a Duncan Amendment, and I'm sorry, I don't have it up right now. Does somebody have that Duncan Amendment up?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it the H3003 that deletes the Montana program?
Yep.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
And
so
income threshold to 250,000.
Yeah. So do you folks have? I mean, we've kind of given and taken a one of each. So any thoughts on that particular one?
I like it.
Once again, I'm very comfortable with it. It's got a little bit of tightening in it with a little bit of loosening, but contract for deed and a few things. I don't think it's major at all.
Yeah. So I'm just saying there's a lot of discussion on the House side that unfortunately it's not divisible, or it's not easily divisible, but maybe we can sort that out if staff gives us, there's one component in it that we think that we're concerned creates a inequity between different classes of property potentially. And I can point that out and I can send it to Mr. Shaw, and he can at least take a look at it and see if we can just remove one part of it out and leave the other parts. So there's about 5 issues in that at least I'm suggesting we would, I guess, we'd like to take 3 or 4 of them and maybe set back one of them, but that's up to you. If you want us to have that looked at, we can let Ian, I'll give Ian some suggestions and he can give us some thoughts.
Let's do it. We're trying to work with you, and I think we're comfortable on this one.
All right, the next one is Senate 2003. There is no mirror amendment in the House also on this one either. This is the delay payments on workers' comp and UI, 2 different sections of the bill. This is not a forgiveness. This is just a delay, the way I read it, just a delay of payments and backfilling with CARES money, but it does not get rid of any liability. It just delays payment. Is that your understanding?
That's correct. That's exactly what the debate was.
So let's have some discussion about that, I guess, if anybody's interested.
Mr. Chairman?
Representative Conley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And could the Senate just talk a little bit about why you thought that this was a necessary addition to those 2 sections? We already just gave a tremendous amount to employers in Section A, and this adds a new Section B to each of them.
We had pretty extensive debate on it. And I don't remember what these passed by. Maybe part of my co-people do. I don't think it was by huge margins. And we did talk about the other programs and how it happened. It is not a major sticking point either way with myself, but I'm not speaking for the other 2 people we've got here.
I'm with the chairman.
Senator Salmi Dalton. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't feel like it's a sticky point either. I think part of the discussion was that some of these businesses, even though they might have gone a payroll loan, they still have lots of expenses coming in. Some hotels, not mine, maybe restaurants, just they had expenses still. Sometimes they have franchise fees. They have lots of different expenses. Maybe they just need to kind of get rolling again. And I think that was the concern, to give them a chance. But I don't know how big a concern that is for some of the small businesses. I think it could be a problem for a little bit of time, but then it would pass. But it gives them I think it gives the department the authority to look at it and versus us, see if there's a problem. So I feel comfortable with it.
It does. It just gives them the ability to do it. Doesn't say they have to do it. And that was the discussion. You brought that out, is there's some people at these programs are waiting to come in and they aren't there yet. Representative Conley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before we vote on this one, could we also talk about Senate Amendment number 5? I'm curious about that one as well.
Without saying a whole lot, you can do what you'd like with it. On my opinion.
Well,
I've been shot over these in conference before, but this is one that really I'm not sure what it truly does. I'm going to be honest with you.
So Mr. Chairman, to that point, I guess when I look at it, it looks like a very similar section out of 1001. In fact, about 2/3 of it is out of 1001, and then there's a couple of additional sentences about the fees and the structure, anyway. So to me, I think maybe the authority already exists elsewhere. Whether the executive branch exercises it is a different question, but the potential is there anyway. So I guess if that one is not very important, we'll set it aside for the moment. Representative Conley, sorry.
Just, Mr. Chairman, just to expedite it, I would move that we accept Senate second reading amendment number 3 and we reject Senate second reading amendment number 5.
Is there any objection to that? Any objection? I guess seeing no objection, Mr. Co-Chair, will adopt that?
I'll sign off on it.
Okay. So maybe we should,
Is my committee okay with that? Okay.
So let's go. I think the only outstanding one we have is actually that Duncan Amendment, and sorry, I don't have the number in front of me. So maybe we should just dispense with that as well. So on my side, for Representative Conlon, this is our amendment. So let's have a discussion on our side about how strongly we feel about trying to get a compromise in this, or we should just move on from here. Representative Wilson or Conley?
Mr. Chairman, this one is a bit hard. I voted against this amendment. Anybody could check that out. I was more comfortable with the way that it was written beforehand, and we've actually heard some from the director of the WCDA that there could be some problems with implementing the Duncan Amendment. So in all honesty, I'd be okay if it didn't pass right now and we worked on it a bit more for that second session.
Representative Wilson, do you have any thoughts?
So sorry for not defending our position, but
Well, more information, just like we did with the other one. More information, we make better decisions, we hope.
Senator Salmi Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm good with that if we want to delete it. I think we had a question on 10, whether we really needed that, which is the new section 7 permitting new temporary programs. We just thought, I thought we had some discussion that we maybe just didn't need that piece, and I wanted to see how the House felt about it.
Sue, what did you think about the Duncan Amendment on the WCDA?
Mr. Chairman, if we had decided to fight for the amendment, I would have tried to at least delete back out the forbearance issue, which was, I think, the component that set up 2 separate classes. So seeing as the only thing I really cared about was deleting part of our amendment, I guess I don't have a strong opinion there.
So let's just, so I guess I'll make this. You folks gave up one on the other end. We'll give up this one. Is that, and then, so we should be complete except for seeing the language, the proposed language for the 35-4-114. Is that what I would understand?
Yep.
And my members, Kathy, is that your understanding as well? And you had a question maybe.
Mr. Chairman, and it was just to respond to Senator Ansami Dalton. We did take care of item number 10 with the motion to kind of reject Senate second reading amendment number 5 and accept number 3, and that is item 10.
Yep. So we'll go get our leader.
I didn't make a comment on on that 2003, but in my conversations with the department, if someone doesn't make a payment now, the division already is unable to make a payment now on either side. The division already has the latitude from a bill that I ran a couple of years ago to waive all interest, fees, everything. So you can actually not make a payment and not be penalized for it for paying later, which this is just a different way of doing that. It's delaying it. So whether they would implement this or not, I don't know, because I think they have all the statutory authority to do that now. Not delaying the payment, but just someone doesn't pay and there's no penalty for not paying. So I didn't mention it earlier, but I don't know that this harms, but I don't know that it'll actually be meaningful to the agency and they will do anything with it because of some changes that we did 2 years ago. So I just throw that out there.
I think we're there. You guys go meet. We'll go see our leadership and get set up, and we'll look for the language. Do we want to do another meeting, or can we just approve language up or down?
Let's just circulate it between the 6 members. Mr. Shaw, if you don't mind just circulating it. If there's any questions, we'll try to deal with that. And if we're all in agreement, then we'll I don't know how we're doing conference committee reports. Are we digitally signing them? Or are we just putting our hands up, handprint?
Mr. Chairman, I'll need your confirmation either by phone or email, but then I can digitally sign them for you.
All right.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you.
One
Go ahead.
quick question. My understanding is that bills will be prepared ultimately for Senate files because there are fewer members, but do you have any specific preference or understanding of whether it should be ultimately prepared as a Senate file or a House bill? Okay,
The final act?
yes, the final act, right.
Oh, heck, are you kidding me? We went this long on the last bill? It's going to be a House bill. Come on.
You're gonna take credit for our bill? Okay, you win.
No, if leadership, if the president and the Senate and Director Olbrich have something they want to follow with this, I'm fine with it. Whatever they'd like to do. I have to say.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
All right. Thank
Well,
you.
we'll let you guys go to the floor. Thank you very much, Chairman Barlow, Representative Conley, and Representative Wilson. We're going to tell our body how good you guys were to deal with. So,
And I want for the public, I want to commend our colleagues on the Senate side. I mean, you heard the passion of a leadership, a technician in Senator Nethercott, who knows the details and understands them, and someone with the biggest heart, a big heart, in Lisa and Selmy Dalton. So hats off to all of you, and thank you for your hard work.
thanks, everybody.
Good job. Thank you.